Spawnable is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color. Every week, we talk news, what we've been playing, and tell you who's invited to the cookout. Our show is all about talking about gaming through a prism of blackness, because we are the culture. Welcome to Brookago, y'all.
What the deal, be Brookago? What's the deal? How you all doing? This is Kahlief Adams. This is Spawn on Me podcast. How you all rocking? I hope you're all doing well. I hope everything is all good in your hoods. I hope everything is doing well in the spaces that you occupy. Again, massive love to all of you at home who are watching, all the folks in podcast land, all the new folks in fanbite land who are rocking with us and being a part of our show. Massive love to you. We have a very interesting and cool, chilled out show this week. Lots of stuff is going on in the space. Lots of things that are coming to us from both inside the industry, outside the industry, culturally. All those things that go along with each other are all there for us to be talking about today. One of the things that I have to talk about right before we get into any news of the day, which I think is really and super, super important, is you saw us put up right before we started our show a picture of Breonna Taylor, who was denied justice this week by the Louisville Police Department. We have to throw up our fists. We have to throw up our voices in big spaces to be able to talk about that in a real way. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it this week because I'm broken. That's one of the reasons why. Again, we've seen these kinds of murders happen from police departments all across our country, all across the world. And I'll say from a personal perspective, I think one of the things that has been in the space that has been really difficult to kind of comprehend has been the energy that has been in that space for a long time that has manifested itself within protest, both peaceful and not peaceful protest, which I think is absolutely okay. I think that is a thing that is absolutely warranted in the times that we live in. I think that, you know, if you want to go through the process of emoting in ways that, you know, society seems and deems to be inappropriate under the circumstances and what we see, I think it's absolutely totally fine in lots of those ways to figure out where you fit in all of these perspectives and figuring out ways to find ways to showcase and share the energy and the emotion that goes along with seeing people who look like you murdered on a consistent basis, not on a random basis, not on a off chance of it happening, but happening way often and way too many times that we've seen, not only in this year but in years past and probably sadly future. So I want to give massive amounts of love to everyone who is out there protesting, everyone who is out there sharing their voices, everyone who is out there doing this safely and peacefully, and also to all the folks who are using their energy for good in lots of different ways. I want to give them massive amounts of love and shouts out in that way. Thing I do want to go back into, and I think this is really interesting, is really quickly, no one was charged in any of the in that murder. There was one person who was charged with basically shooting the building, wanton endangerment, which was the theme of the day. That was the thing that just magically came up and ruined me in lots of different ways. I don't know what to do with that information. But again, it does not surprise me that a system that is built to destroy the black body has figured out more ways to do that, and figured out ways to signal that that work will continuously be done and will always happen, unless there is massive change in this way, in the ways and the spaces that we occupy, from lots of different angles within that conversation as well. So before we get into actual game stuff and talk about the news of the day, because there's a lot of it, I just want to say to my sisters out there, like, it is very difficult to know where you find safety in these times. I think the conversation I see from lots of my sisters online has been we don't know where to go to find space. We don't know where to go to find peace. We don't know where to go to find safety. I hope that our show, in the small ways that it can and that it's possible to do, is a place for comfort for you. I hope that this place is a space where you can feel like you have at least someone who understands and at least someone who cares enough to demonstrate that that is an important thing here. One of the things that makes me most happy about this work and getting a chance to do it is to give Black women a space to have a platform. We've done it over our 6 years of our podcast being here. We will continue to have that be a thing that is paramount in the work that we do. It will always be a thing that we will try to figure out ways to accommodate whenever we possibly can. And I want to continue to do what we did with Janae Benet and other folks in that space, is to pass the mic when it comes to not just things that affect Black women and women in general on our show, but just giving them the microphone to say, like, hey, we have a platform here that welcomes your voice and that wants it to be loud and proud. It wants it to talk about the things you care about, even if other spaces will not let you do that or give you that space to do that. So that is very important to me as the host and owner of this show and of this business, to be able to do that work. And I want to continue to do that in loud and proud ways. I would say, in terms of gaming conversations and in terms of the gaming industry, for a show that's not run by a Black woman, we probably have more Black women on our show than any gaming podcast has in the past 6 years. I'm fully aware that is probably more than likely the case in terms of giving people space to be able to do what they need to do here. And I think that is something that I am infinitely proud about and infinitely happy to say out loud. So, again, everybody who's home, listening, on your podcast app, folks who are hanging out with us here on Twitch tonight, I want to say I love you. I hope that you're safe. And everybody who's out in the streets with their fists raised and their voices really loud right now, raise hell. Give them all the hell that they deserve, because they deserve it. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to get through this, is if our voices are loud and proud, and if all those things come to bear in all the reasonable ways that we can possibly do that work. So that is one part of the conversation for today. Another part of the conversation for today is we just came off of not only a fantastic show before and a couple days ago, but we had honestly our best Spawn for Good that we've ever had. Spawn for Good 6, No Voter Left Behind 20 was an amazing success. We kicked ass on these streams. We did massive amount of work. I'm going to go over a couple of quick things that are just like bullet point numbers that I think are important to set the record, right? I think one of the things that goes along with these events is not only the fact that we got a chance to do good, but I think that from a going forward perspective, I think it's important to always chronicle and to put on and state on the record, what you were able to do with the people that you had with you. And again, massive amount of love to all the folks who streamed with us over the weekend. Again, Greg Miller, Mary Kish, Shadow Haxor, Zombie Kills, Wallstormer, the folks over Official SDGC, and so many other folks who came through and rocked with us. Mega Ran and the folks from Giant Bomb came through in big ways for us. We had 26 hours of content that happened over that weekend. We had, let me see the numbers really quick. And these numbers right now that I'm about to say, when I say them out loud, it is pretty astonishing what you can do if you have an idea and you kind of make it happen in a real way. And the biggest person that I have to give massive love and shouts out to is my fam, Sterling McGarvey, who again, he used to be in the gaming industry in a very kind of open way. I think he's doing more stuff on the consultancy side, which kind of puts him behind the curtain a little bit more. But without him, this event wouldn't have happened. We raised over $18,000 in 26 hours. That is an amazing amount of money to have raised with all of you at home spreading the love and giving us love for doing that work. $18,000+ is a nuts number to say out loud. So again, we broke our record 3 times basically. We started off as a $5,000 effort that then got blown out of the water because of Zombie Kills' like initial, massive first front page love that she got. Then we blasted through 5K. Now, mind you, every Vote Writers event that we've done, we've really kind of capped it at 5K because we want to, have a humble goal so that we can make sure that we hit that for them. Because again, organizations like this are small. They don't really have a lot of people to work on the projects that they do to make this stuff really happen. And we want to make sure that we can at least guarantee them getting what they need to do. So that was the first thing. Then we got to 15K. We bumped it up to 15K. And our friend Will Tuttle, friend of the show, friend of Brookago, works at Xbox. He works at Microsoft, and he offered up an Xbox Series S that we gave away at the end of that stream. We also have to find those people and still contact them because they still are the winners. And if they don't get contacted, that means we have to re-roll that bad boy again. So that's another thing. And then magically we got to $18,000, which was nuts as a number, just again to say that thing. And Alex Navarro played some magical music that was fantastic. It was so good to see him do that thing to like get us over that initial $16,000 goal. And then we blew past that and got to 18K. The numbers I want to share with you are just a little bit of a back end nod to what we saw in terms of presence, in terms of what we saw in terms of growth, in terms of what we saw in terms of visibility and all of this stuff. So over the 2 days that we streamed, we had over 840,000 people watch the streams. Over those 2 days, we had over 840,000 people watch Spawn for Good #6. We also had almost 760 new followers to the channel. We averaged over 2,600 viewers over that time. And we had, at least throughout the time that we were on stream, 1,000 people chatting at a time. Those numbers are huge in terms of what our channel has been able to do. We sit at right now 1.6 million views on our channel, and that was mostly because of that weekend. So think about the impact that you can have, the visibility that you can have, and all those kinds of things when you think about how this is all going to work, and you have ideas of like how big the event can be and how wide you can go with it. This is what we did with some heavy hitters and some family that we all have over a weekend. Just imagine what we're able to do when it comes to, the bigger scope of what Spawn for Good is able to do once we have more funding, once we have more people, once we have even more time to plan, because we got that planned out in probably 3 weeks, was to get everybody together, get the new assets for Spawn for Good to go and come through, gather everything, have a game plan, all that stuff. Twitch blessed us with multiple front page views during that day for Saturday. So again, it goes into the conversation about, what this means for us as a group of folks who want to do more charity events. Like one of the things I've been talking to folks here locally in Portland has been around, we had this massive devastation of these wildfires here in Portland, Oregon. We have been thinking about doing something with the folks over at Mercy Corps because they have been doing fantastic work on the ground here in Portland to see if we can figure out ways to help there. So there may be another, before 2020 is over, another event that possibly goes on that helps to benefit those folks and the folks over at Mercy Corps. It's a thing we're trying to iron out right now. So don't be surprised if you hear a thing about that coming up soon for our channel. So before we jump over to the news of the week, I want to say again, thank you to everyone who celebrated our joining of Fanbyte. It was a phenomenal launch in terms of us getting into that new space in a new way. The folks over at Fanbyte have been beautiful and amazing. They have been super, super helpful with growing us there already and launching us into good spaces. It feels like already feels like family in lots of different ways because of the energy that's just within that crew. It feels like they have a lot of good East Coast energy, which I need because West Coast energy is very different in that way. Like people are kind of like passive aggressive on the West Coast in that way, especially here in Portland. Folks in the Fanbyte group are from multiple different places, but it feels like this good New York energy, East Coast energy in a lot of different ways. So that was good. And they were fantastic on the show, rocking with us. And that was super, super cool and amazing. And it was very, 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 very cool to be able to see that stuff happen in real ways. I'm gonna, at the break of the show, for the folks who are watching on Twitch, I'll be showcasing and sharing some clips from Spawn for Good. You won't hear that in the audio version because it doesn't make sense because you can't see the visuals behind it. But for the folks who are here on Twitch land, we'll go through a couple of quick clips when we hit the break of the show. So keep an eye out for that for sure. But until then, what we're going to wind up doing right now is get into the 411. So we have the 411 this week. It is full of lots of different things, lots of different news today. This week, because this week has been madness in lots of different ways. Like I think, of course, the debacles between, how do you get through all the pre-order madness that happened? There was some madness that happened on the Xbox side there. There was, the 3080 card stuff and then the 3090s that happens this morning because we're recording this on Thursday. A lot of stuff that went down this week that changed a lot of conversations and a lot of different things that we kind of touched upon in our previous episode, but I think have really come to fruition within this first week. The first big story of the week is all about Microsoft. Microsoft has purchased and bought out ZeniMax as the parent company of Bethesda. The biggest gaming deal that we've seen in gaming history, I probably would say. It is a watershed moment in lots of different ways as well, where you never see this happen in this big of a way in these times when there's a lot of money contrition and there's a lot of ideas around like how much stuff do you have that you can actually share and show and all that kind of stuff. And Microsoft did a really huge deal that no one saw coming. It's a thing that usually gets leaked out but didn't get leaked out this time, which was actually pretty cool, because usually that stuff gets dropped really early. You'll hear Jason Schreier or Patrick Klepek will tweet out a thing and be like, yo, I know a thing's about to come down, so like make sure you're paying attention and checking for it. And none of that happened this time, which was pretty phenomenal and pretty cool to be able to see from that perspective. Bethesda now folds under Microsoft. So that means that Doom, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield, all those games are going to wind up going to Microsoft in real ways. They will own those properties in big ways. They spent $7.5 billion on all of those entities. And the best thing about that for folks at home is that all that stuff winds up going directly into Game Pass. So again, Game Pass now becomes this extra layer of content that you're just gonna get. Like next Bethesda game, you're just gonna get that in Game Pass. You just get it. It'll just be in it. And you don't have to think about it. If you have that subscription still paid up and you're still rocking with it, it's just gonna be there. That is crazy. That's madness. Starfield, whatever that game is going to wind up being, which again, I don't want to see another version of Skyrim. My God, Jesus Christ. Please don't make Skyrim anymore. Don't put it on next gen consoles, even though I know it's going to come out on next gen consoles. We don't want any more, please, Skyrims, unless it's a new Elder Scrolls that we know is actually going to happen. Please don't make any more Skyrims. Please, sweet Jesus, please. So that's going to be in that conversation. I think that the most interesting part about all of this is, again, it shifts the conversation in a real way back to what we saw a couple of weeks ago with the Sony press conference, or last week. I don't know what time is. What the hell is time? Sony's press conference with their showcase, and the prevailing conversation that you heard across all of that was, it's like Microsoft doesn't have anything to show. Microsoft has no games. What is going to happen at launch? Nobody cares. What are they going to do? Because they don't have any games. Halo getting dropped and getting pushed back was the biggest news for Xbox fans because they supposedly now don't have any games. Now we put up these kinds of comparison photos where it's like, here are all the things that are happening for Sony, here are all the things happening for Xbox, and the major thing that they had on the Sony side was Miles Morales and Deathloop being their kind of like two big gets, right? The ones that they had that were exclusives. This is like huge news in terms of flipping that on its ear, because now, for as much as you want to give Bethesda shit for bad engines and janky engines and Fallout 76 not being good, and previous Fallout 4 story being kind of wonky, Doom was a good game and it hit well. It wasn't my favorite game because I feel like this second game was pretty much the same thing as the first game. But I think for all that said, having all those new potential IPs that are going to come out of those for years is going to be a huge boon to them when they already have a stable of folks like Obsidian and Turn 10 and the Coalition and Halo folks and all this other stuff. And then when you take that offering and you don't even talk about Game Pass yet in that sense, not even talking about xCloud yet, right? You're not even hitting on that part of the fence. It then becomes something that is way more worth what you would have expected that particular service to be, while also continuing to give you value, because again, those games are going to be bundled in to wherever that is. Now the conversation has changed into one of Microsoft not having a whole bunch of stuff to Microsoft having probably too much stuff and having all the stuff, and people being worried about monopolies and them, messing around with the industry in a way that is not beneficial to the industry. I had a fantastic conversation that I wish you would have recorded with my friend Greg Haynes from over at Able Gamers. We game all the time, we play all the time, and chop it up and talk about games. And he was really worried about that from that perspective, to say like it was basically like the Kanye "nobody should have all that power" kind of joint. And Wheels in the chat, he says, are we ever going to get to a space where we are wary of monopoly and oligarchy again? It's just too late for any of that. So I love Phil Spencer and his team, but I think Microsoft buying ZeniMax is bad. There's a lot of folks who have that conversation right now. There's a lot of people who are having that sentiment in their purview right now. There's a lot of folks who are like wondering, is this a bad sign for the potential of what the gaming industry can be, not only from a monopoly standpoint and a loss of variety. And this was Greg's some of his point. And if I'm paraphrasing this because we had a lot of different conversations, and I think we had a lot of different angles that we talked about. But one of his ideas was basically like, how bad does this work if the studios don't perform up to the standards that the Microsoft Now execs have? Does that mean that we're going to see a lot of closures in that space? Do we see, because they have new metrics at the new KPIs that they have to hit, how does that affect those studios who usually would have to just answer to themselves and their stockholders to say like, that's a different angle to the conversation? My personal viewpoint on that whole thing was, from a philosophy perspective, I don't see Microsoft doing something like that, or shuttering more studios, or, holding these folks to this really weird and unattainable level of standard that makes them more susceptible to being on the chopping block if they don't perform in any other way than any other company would do with any other team or any other studio or any of that stuff. I think that, some of those folks will definitely have to, buck up and try to figure out ways to be better for the games that they have. But I think that those particular conversations would have been there regardless of, the acquisition or not. What I do think this changes is also Sony's strategy. I think Sony's strategy now has to change into a way where they have to double think about this kind of archaic version of the way that they're rolling out their next gen consoles in comparison to a company that looks really nimble, looks like they have money to spend. This is the NBA's version of the super team conversation in a lot of different ways. And they're going to have to try to figure out how they're going to bolster their US side of the fence. There was TGS has just started, Tokyo Game Show just started. Phil Spencer had a conversation, a pre-recorded message out there that was basically saying that, we want to make sure that we're coming correct when we go to Japan. And again, Sony has Japan on lock. I still don't think that Microsoft has a real way to do that, even if they supposedly, because of the rumors that we've heard, buy Sega. I just don't think Sega has the catalog right now that people care that much about it besides Sonic. And even then, so what? Sonic games are cool, but Sonic at this point isn't the same mascot that we remember when we were in our early 90s and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that carries the same cachet in that same way. So I don't know what that is in all those places. I don't think that necessarily works in that same way. But what I will say, besides all that, is that now is the time, if you really want to think about the console wars, all those kinds of things that go into that space, this is going to be a really interesting moment for Microsoft, because I can absolutely see, if they continue to acquire different companies in this same way, that all those conversations around them now becoming the big conglomerate in a way that seems detrimental to the industry are going to start to bubble up if we see some of those angles kind of come to fruition. If we see them start to close down stuff, and we see them then kind of move in, nefarious ways, or what the industry feels is nefarious. The one thing that I did say to Greg about that in terms of the conversation that we had was, no one gets bought out if they don't want to get bought out. The conversation around this is them coming in, and because I've heard this online from a couple people, this is them kind of overstepping their bounds and taking over stuff when they don't need to, and then kind of ruining companies because they're just coming in and doing what they want wantonly. The folks over at ZeniMax knew something was going to happen. The folks over at ZeniMax saw a number, and of course, if you see $7.5 billion, raise your hand in the chat or raise your hand at home when you're turning down $7.5 billion. No one's turning down that kind of dough. But if you have given them a space to continue to do the work in the way that they want to, then I feel like it winds up being a push. I think, of course, there are folks in the who are the worker bees and all those folks, who are gonna, you wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, we got bought out. I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? What happens now? We saw it with a couple of companies that I can think of off the top of my head. The Quixel folks who got bought out by Epic. From all accounts, from the people that I talk to on a fairly consistent basis that I know, that merger from a really small team to now a much bigger company seems to have gone fairly well for them. The conversation that Major Nelson had on his podcast a couple of days ago that featured Pete Hines, Todd Howard, Phil Spencer, all talking about the merger in that kind of space. Everyone seemed like this is going to be a really good thing for them to be able to make the games that they want to make. One of the things that really came across, which I thought was the most important conversation from two perspectives, was one from Pete Hines, where he talked about the trust factor that has been built up between Bethesda and to Microsoft, between those two companies over the years that have been built up. I think that trust factor is very, very important. It feels a little bit different when you talk about a company that works side by side with the companies that they build games with in a Microsoft, as opposed to you see with an acquisition from a company like Amazon. Amazon will buy out a company, they will gut it for a certain extent, or they will have the teams on, but the layers of, red tape that you wind up putting in when you start to implement the Amazon way or the big company way changes fundamentally how those people do work. I remember I used to be at a company that was run by or was purchased by Amazon, and as an IT worker, and my work changed in negative ways. The quality of work that I was able to give my customers was different and not great. And the archaic ways that they would talk about the ideas around IT work was awful. It made me hate my job, and it made me hate the way that I had to work, and it made me hate the new things that they would try to implement that had no purpose, that didn't make my job better, and it didn't make the work better. So I think that when we talk about these acquisitions, we have to give space, one, for time. Two, we have to give space for the companies who have decided to get bought out, because you don't get bought out just for the sake of it. You know what you're going to get for the most part when that happens. And also we have to see how the games are going to wind up being affected in that way. I think if the next Bethesda joint that comes out sucks it up and it's garbage and it doesn't feel good, doesn't seem like they've made any growth, then we have to then say, well, what was this acquisition for? What was the space that was supposed to happen here? What actually did happen once that thing got done? So it's a little bit too early to tell. It's a little bit too early to understand what all the machinations of what that's going to wind up being is going to be. But I do think that the space there for them to do cool things is absolutely going to be there. Like, I hope now that they have become now first party, in the same ways that we saw Insomniac could get a huge benefit from being first party with Sony, getting the hardware early, getting a chance to play around with some of that stuff in a faster way. That'll do nothing but good for the potential projects that Bethesda will be putting out in the next couple of years. And I think that changes potentially the conversation around what we talk about when it comes to Bethesda for the games that they make. The one that is going to be the most interesting is going to be Starfield, because it's there and it has a space and it's still kind of, no one knows what the hell it is. But knowing that thing is going to be on a next gen console, from the conceptual parts of what that game is supposed to be, is really impressive and really cool. And to think about whatever the next Elder Scrolls game is going to wind up being in 4K, 4K 60, all those kind of things, that's all going to be more expansive. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be broader in what they're going to be able to do about all these things. And I think that will be what all of us as gamers at home are going to be really excited about once those projects kind of get off the ground and figure out if this stuff is going to work. So I have to give Greg a massive big shout out. He's in the chat tonight. Give it up for Hazy Rome in the chat for sparking that debate and sparking that conversation, because I think it was brilliant in the way that he shared his position. It was great to kind of like butt heads about that thing and try to figure out like what we were going to talk about and how I was going to bring that conversation to you all at home. Hopefully we'll be able to get Greg back on the show to have this conversation proper. Because I think that there may be more things that happen in the not too distant future if Microsoft again continues to buy more people out with the buckets of money that they have currently in the space. So that's going to be very, very cool to see what the heck goes on in there. Our next story is all about Microsoft and the new Xbox expansion cards. I thought I had a picture of it somewhere. Let me see if I can pick up one. Let me see if this is going to work super fast. Let's see. So if you are familiar with what is happening with the Microsoft Xbox Series X, there is a spot in the back of the console, basically, that will give you more space for more expanded memory. This more expanded memory is an NVMe card. It is, I think, Gen 4. So it's like, the fastest version that you can get currently. It is a 1 terabyte card that is going to be, not bundled, but you have to pay for when and if you get an Xbox Series X. There are some specific things that go along with that card that I think are actually really important. I think for one of the folks who has been really excited about the quick swapping of games. You know, you put things to sleep like you would on a Switch. And those games, up to 4 games, I think, was the initial conversation about what you'd be able to put into a kind of like hibernate mode and see, you know, how those things running in the background so you can quickly swap between those. That's an interesting part of that conversation because that's been there for a minute. I'm trying to figure out if it's confirmed how many things you'd be able to put on there in terms of that stuff. I'm looking at this Kotaku article just to make sure that I have everything kind of ready and able to talk about in a good way. It doesn't look like it's over there in that space. The biggest story about that whole thing, honestly, is not even about the actual version of the memory. It's the fact that it's going to cost you about $220. $220 for that one card. Which, if you're looking at NVMe cards now in their native state in terms of, you know, where they lay in the PC architecture and ecosystem, they're about that price. Like, you can get one for cheaper depending upon who you get it from. But for that gen of this kind of card, they're really expensive. Terabyte cards are really expensive. They are not cheap. They cost a lot of money. The thing that was the most concerning to me was less about the actual price. Now, mind you, it's a sticker shock price. I understand that people see that and they freak out, and it's reasonable to freak out about that particular price. I think that makes a lot of sense to be worried about that price. But I think for me, it's less about the price and more about which card vendor they're going with. So I have had negative experiences with Seagate cards. I noticed they are going with them as their vendor for this thing. You know, my Seagate drives were all disk based, you know, platters, spinning kinds of drives. I've never had a Seagate SSD because of the fact that my other drives have failed over the years from Seagate. My worry is that with going with that particular vendor, that we're going to have a problem with quality, to be honest. Like, I just don't trust Seagate as a brand, that when you say that name, I have like Seagate PTSD in some weird ways. Like, I'm just like, oh no, I don't like it. Don't give me a Seagate drive. Seagate drives are kind of trash. Of course, I will take all that with a big grain of salt. I have not used their products in a very long time, but I do think that there is a space there to have that discussion. I would have much more rather to see them go with Samsung on a drive expansion thing. I think this also will boost people's want because of the expensive price tag on these to go external drives, because you can put a 3.1 USB 3.1 drive into an Xbox Series X and use that as your external game drive. You do lose some functionality though, because you wind up not being able to play certain games on. You can play those games, but I think that there's a compatibility problem between, you know, if you're able to do the quick swap stuff with some of those games. And I won't say what that is yet because I don't fully have it baked into, you know, the actual like truthful, honest version of that yet. I just don't know. I just haven't done the research on that, and I will come back with that in a later date. We'll re-talk about this, I'm sure, in the next show that we do, just to clarify those things. But I think transfer speeds are part of that. TDH in the chat says probably due to rewriting transfer speeds for the external drive. Probably, yeah. Like, you know, that's an easy, quick way to probably determine why that would be a problem. As you saw with the PlayStation 5, they've gone and gotten proprietary drives that they've made specifically for their consoles because of those needs to have things read and write super fast in that way. I think it is really important for that to be a part of their ecosystem to make sure they got it right, because that's going to be a thing that they're really worried about and talking about in real ways. So that is something that is very, very important and specific to them. I do think, let me check really quick in the chat. It says the game can be stored in an external USB drive, but has to be moved to an internal drive before being played. Okay. So you'll have to move that game from that external drive into the internal drive, because that internal drive will be able to read it faster. Makes sense. But at $220, that's going to be a hard thing when you've already spent $500 plus a controller, plus a couple of games, plus whatever other peripherals are going to be in the space at that point in time. I do wonder what's going to wind up happening for the folks who are, at the gate purchasing all that kind of stuff. Because I'll be honest, one of the things I did not see during the whole process of trying to pre-order an Xbox Series X was this card. I didn't see that anywhere, to be honest. I think that's going to be a really weird thing that wasn't in the ecosystem until probably closer to launch. But it is going to be a thing that they're going to have to message out very specifically and in great detail why you should have that thing. So that's going to be tricky for them to be able to get that across the finish line, but it will be really interesting to see what they do with it. I just don't know what that's going to wind up being for them in real ways. It's going to be just like super funky for them to try to figure out how to message that out in a good way, and then try to figure out what they're going to do with it and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm not excited for them to have to try to figure out all those things in a space where messaging has been really bad. I wouldn't say it's necessarily terrible from the Xbox position, because I think they've done a fairly good job of getting people the information that they need, showing videos of like, here's how fast it'll take to load a game. Here's the kind of other stuff that you can do. There was a problem during during pre-order day, where a lot of people mistakenly bought the previous gen console because the naming convention was too close, which I found to be amazingly ironic and funny. But I think that, again, with next gen now being super close in lots of different ways, we're a couple months out literally from these things being in your homes if you pre-ordered. There's some tightening up to do in terms of the way that things wind up getting messaged out in real ways, because it's just nuts to be able to figure out like where things lay, where things are going to go, how that stuff is supposed to work. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to wind up being confused when it comes time for them to get that stuff done. So that's going to be rough. We'll be checking on that to see where that stuff winds up going and how that stuff winds up laying out in terms of all the energy that's going to be in that space for that conversation. Also, pre-order stuff has just been janky all week. Like PS5 stuff was bad, Microsoft stuff was bad. There has to be a way to figure out a way to make this stuff better. I will say this for my PlayStation 5 pre-order. The one good thing was that they did have a queue system. If you were one of the lucky folks who've gotten an email that was like, hey, if you want to get one, use this particular link. You'll be put into a queue. You will go there, copy your stuff, and get whatever peripherals you want, and then dip out. I was lucky enough to be able to snag one of those emails, and I hope at this point, I have like 2 pre-orders in 2 different places at this point. I hope that whole thing goes through, and I did like that system. I think it was smart to be able to do that, so that you can avoid having to battle all the bots that's on the internet to be able to get a console. That was not a fun experience at all. It was really, really bad, to be honest, to see how many things and how many hoops you had to go through to just get this one particular thing that, there should be a lot of. It would be nice to make sure that there's a lot of those in the channel, so that you can get that stuff. All that aside, if you were able to get one, congratulations. If you did not, I'm sorry. The process sucked and it was ass. And it was booty butt cheeks, and I don't like it, and it needs to change, and I hope it changes soon for lots of folks for the upcoming stuff that's going to be coming out too, because I think there's a lot of that conversation happening in real ways. Before we take a quick break before our last story of the night, I have to give a massive shout out to our friends over at Team Liquid. The folks over at Team Liquid are been kind enough to sponsor our show for the month of September. They have been brilliant to work with. They are fantastic folks. They have been amazingly kind and amazingly dope for working with us here at Spawn on Me. And it's been amazing to, work with such a big company, have our name attached to their stuff, and to be able to say that we have been one of the first folks, actually probably the first, I think if I'm not mistaken, podcast to be able to work with them in a real way in this way. So again, go over to tl.gg/store. cop some of their stuff. We're going to take a quick break. Again, for the folks here at Twitch, we're going to listen to right after the Team Liquid commercial. We're going to look at a couple of quick clips and stuff like that. And then we'll run into our last story of the night for the 411. So until then, everybody at home, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back after this.
A hero is often thought of as legendary, a figure of divine descent, someone endowed with great strength or ability, someone who's admired for courage, outstanding achievements, and noble qualities. For some, the journey seems like it has no end, no light, no more fight to give. It's in those trying times that heroes are born, that champions rise up, that legends are forged, when obstacles turn into opportunities. No matter the circumstance, no matter the journey, there's always one thing that reigns true: a drive to be the best. That's what makes a hero. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. It matters how many times you get back up.
Again, massive love to our folks over from Team Liquid for supporting our show and for rocking with us and doing all that work and helping us out by supporting Brookago in the ways that they do. Really quickly, I want to show a couple of clips from Spawn for Good, which I thought were brilliant and I thought was very, very cool. It's a couple of stuff. I have to figure out a way to put together a compilation of some stuff for all of this because I thought it was real dope. I'm just going to go through a couple of my favorite clips from the weekend. The first one that I want to go through really fast was, and for context, this was all of us playing. It was myself, Zombie, Cameron Hawkins, Ray Apollo. All of us were playing Among Us. I was running around doing my thing, getting things done. I was the killer during this particular part of the game. And you're going to hear a really funny part from our friend over at Ray Apollo. Sadly, you can't hear it, but you can't see it because the death wasn't captured on my end. I was, the person Zombie was already doing it, but I just want to go through this because it was actually really fucking funny.
I trusted you!
Well, that's gotta be the most I've ever seen one.
I'm gonna. Oh my god. Well, I was going to say that I followed Cam like.
So Ray got stabbed in the middle of one of the rooms, and I had to get him because it was just in the space, and it was amazing to get him. I did not expect him to just hit me with the massive guilt trip after I killed him, screaming, "I trusted you!" I didn't know what to do with that energy. I had no idea. I was laughing my ass off because it was super, super funny. Mary Kish, next up, master Spelunky player. I loved her streams because she was just like on it and she was like really into it. And I love the fact she curses like a sailor like I do. Here's a quick clip from Mary.
That gives you nothing? I thought that would give you some money. I just killed it. That's a miscalculation on my part. I thought that... No! He
It was dope. Yo, Mary's spots were super funny because she was not trying to kill the dogs, and then the dogs would wind up dying. It was pretty great to see all that stuff happen. It was really, really funny. Keeping with the Spelunky train, we had the folks over from Make This Podcast come through. And they did something really fun, actually. They did like a 4-person Spelunky run. I did not know you can play 4 people at a time in Spelunky. I don't know why. I've played that game a million times on the previous game and then Spelunky 2. But they did like a really cool overlay and all this other cool stuff. And one of the things they did was they bet, or they made a deal where basically the first person who would die would have to spend a certain amount of money. And in this clip, they were talking about how one of the guys was like, yo, I'm dying a lot. I need to put a cap on this thing. And the rebuttal to that was pretty sweet.
15 minutes left in our stream. I suggested a cap, and Dan was like, "No caps." No caps. Why would you cap freedom? Why would you cap freedom?
Because we're in a pandemic.
No, that's not how it works. Vote right.
Why would you cap freedom?
I tried to make an anime themed rap for us, Michael, but it didn't work.
Now let me hear you spit it.
Hold on 1 second, because this is actually really funny. I'm gonna rewind this part because I hit the wrong button first. So, of course, before Spawn for Good, if you have been a fan or you've been watching all the stuff between me and Paris, you know about our Paris, you know about our rib beef, you know what that means in terms of all the stuff. I did not expect the rib beef to wind up coming into the official SGGC conversation as well.
Look at this card. Matchup on matchup.
I tried to make an anime themed rap for us, Michael, but it didn't work.
Now let me hear you spit it.
Josh,
me too. One.
Kahlief, I'm sorry, man.
Well, yes, it is Alex versus John. Let's go.
Go grab some bib.
Cause ribs.
Ain't good body.
That was okay. Let's go.
I hate you all. I hate you all for talking about my ribs like this. It's just not fair. I wasn't even there to defend myself. I didn't even have a chance to talk about the ribs in a real way. And they just making rap joints about me and my ribs being bad. That was fucked up. I love them, but that hurt my feelings. That messed me up. That messed me up big time. I didn't know what to do. I sat home and cried. Mad disrespect. Thank you, TD. Mad disrespect. Last clip before we go back to the news is I have been a huge fan of Giant Bomb. Giant Bomb, if you watch the end of the Spawn for Good show, the Spawn for Good streams, I talked a little bit about without Giant Bomb, there is no Spawn on Me. Without that show, without those folks, Brad Shoemaker, Jeff Gersman, Ryan Davis, Alex Navarro, Vinny Caravella, all those folks, the like OGs of that show, there wouldn't be a Spawn on Me. Like, they have fundamentally given the blueprint and the roadmap of how to do a podcast. So to have Brad and Alex come onto our podcast, or rep us via Spawn for Good, was like a dream come true. So this last clip is of Brad Shoemaker having the best and worst luck in Spelunky, and it just tells you that like Kahlief will give and Kahlief will take away. So always be kind to Kahlief whenever you're playing all of the Spelunky 2.
7 hearts. I don't think I've ever had that many ever. Oh boy, let's just go. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's get some work done here. Now the real Spelunky can begin. Oh boy. Okay. Huh. Oh man. This Oh. Thanks for joining me, everybody. It's been real. Just want to thank the fine folks that spawned on me for having me. It's been an honor.
It was one of the best moments I'd ever seen on the channel. It was amazingly great. to see poor Brad, who I love, get all the goodies and have all those things taken away. So again, massive love to everyone who came through, rocked with us over Spawn for Good, gave us love, and came through and did it up real big. It always means a lot to see people I respect and love be able to be in a space with us and like rock out in the ways that they were. So our last story for this episode is all about Amazon Luna. So it looks like Amazon is now coming to the streaming service, the cloud gaming service conversation, with a new service that's going to be, it's already in, signups for early access. But what it's going to wind up doing is kind of like what Stadia has been doing, but probably better because Stadia is not doing really well. So for an introductory price of $5.99 per month, you'll get a curated library of PC games called Luna Plus on the Luna Plus game channel. It says that those games will be playable across a broad range of devices, including Fire TV, PC, Mac, and iOS devices, which is nuts. So it's via a web-based app that bypasses Apple's App Store from Engadget, is what they shared. That is sneaky as fuck. That is real bugged out that that's the case. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but if Amazon is saying that they can skirt around iOS in that way and do that work in that way, that's wild to me. That's going to be something that is very, very interesting, seeing how these things are going to kind of change the way that we're thinking about these games, and thinking about not only that, but of Amazon being able to be an arbiter or a person who's bringing that stuff to the space. That's, again, going to be real funky to see how that's going to work. They said the titles expected to be playable during early access are going to be Resident Evil 7, Control, Panzer Dragoon, A Plague Tale: Innocence, Surge 2, Yooka-Laylee, and The Impossible Lair, Iconoclasts, Grid, Abzu, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and more. Amazon also announced the first of many additional channels. The Ubisoft channel that'll take a selection of older games, and may also have access to games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla on day one. The coolest thing that people have kind of been talking about in terms of all of that has been the controller, which I think is kind of cool. It actually looks like that. It's over my face. It's a controller on my face. Which looks pretty cool, actually. I think it's, of course, it's reminiscent of the Xbox controller. I think it is very much a, one-to-one analog of what that controller is going to be. Again, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if this is going to get off the ground in a real way. Amazon is known for killing projects that don't perform well. The thing that is also going to be really interesting is that they're trying to connect the game in a similar way to the way Stadia did with YouTube, but they're going to be doing this with Twitch, where you should be able to see a game that someone is playing on the channel, and then seeing that game, you should be able to basically pop in and play that game on your console. I don't know if you're going to be able to stream it in the same way that they have in that space, but you should be able to, from what they said. They said the service will be integrated into Twitch. Folks watching a game being played will be able to launch Luna games directly from Twitch, while Luna game pages will prominently feature streams of games in progress. Again, that sounds a lot like what Stadia is doing. The thing that I actually really care about, besides the Amazon angle and the, watch it on Twitch, be able to play it on Twitch, is this going to be a thing that's going to get folded into Prime Gaming, which I think they should. I think this should be absolutely a thing that they should fold into Prime Gaming. 2, I think this is be a thing that they should absolutely let streamers be the ones to showcase, should be the ones that they should have as the guinea pigs for it, should be the ones that they are going to have to promote it, and have there be some incentive as a streamer. And as, there's going to be a whole bunch of conversations about like, oh, this is going to be a thing for the partners or folks who are not partners. We don't know yet. if that's ever going to be a thing, if it's going to be a thing at all. But I do think these are all incentives to get people into an ecosystem that they're already in, while showcasing the people who would be using it, or the folks that they're seeing every day through the content that they watch, see those folks be the ones who are the tastemakers in this space. Will be really cool to see what that looks like from that perspective. I think that's going to be very interesting, but I don't know yet what that means for the service yet. You know, I put in my name to get early access. I'm going to reach out to the PR folks on that side to see if we get hands on with it at some point, so I can report back to you all here in Brookago. I think, you know, it's going to be weird with the with the stuff you're already paying for. Like, I know a lot of people already have subs. King of Co-op says paying a subscription for a platform and then needing to purchase games on top of that. Exactly. Like, that's not something that is really exciting in that way. As a person who is currently using xCloud on an Android device that works really well, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, latency. You know, what's the connectivity stuff look like? What's the game pricing going to look like? There are a lot of different questions in that space for us to kind of like bark through and figure out. I think, you know, again, is it going to be a thing that, you know, Google has had a space to kind of get in there and work the angles, and it hasn't really worked yet, because it's been wonky in terms of the messaging and what they're going to offer. Xbox and Microsoft are the best positioned currently because they folded so many different things under Game Pass that everything looks like a bargain at this point. And the service works well. The biggest thing for Luna is going to be, again, how much you're going to make me pay, how much that stuff gets rolled into other services that I already have. Are you going to offer me any games that are not going to be stuff that I can get on other platforms that maybe work better? And then what's your tolerance for pain, basically? Because it's like, if it doesn't pop off in a way, is this going to be a thing that we see get killed in the water fairly early? Because no units are being sold and no one's picking up the subscriptions, and it's really only the first adopters who are going to be checking out this thing just to see if it works. So I think there's a lot of things in that space to figure out what's going to happen. I don't know where it's going to land, but it is an interesting idea that they're trying to get into the game in a real way, and how they're going to kind of make that thing happen is going to be pretty cool. I'm not going to crap on it because I don't know what it's like yet. So lots of things to discuss. I think, you know, again, we're a couple of months out from launch. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to be happening for us on the channel in lots of different ways. You know, Tokyo Game Show is going to be happening this week and probably a little bit into next week. So there'll be some information there. You know, will we see another buyout from Microsoft of a Japanese company, which has been the rumor of late? There's been lots of conversations around that. And then also, what's just going to happen with any new announcements coming out of Sony? Again, if you listen to our show from this week, or from this past week, there are still so many unanswered questions coming out of the Sony camp. And I wonder if they're a little bit shook after all the stuff that happened with Xbox this week. We will see. We don't know yet. I hope everybody is patient in that way, but I also think it's about time that Sony needed to step up its game and talk about some of the stuff that we need to know. The feature list is pretty big, and we just don't know what any of it does yet, and how those systems are going to work together to give you a good experience when you're at home. So, last announcement, next week, in terms of a show, I don't know what's going to happen yet. I may try to record another thing this weekend. I am moving to a new home. So I have to reset up all my streaming stuff and set up all my things. So that's going to be a lot of what's going to happen for me in the next couple of days. I'll be packing as soon as I finish recording this show, and most of the weekend. So lots of things are going to be coming through for me and the Adams family in the next, 72 to 96 hours of getting things together. But with that said, I want to say again, thank you to everyone who came through tonight to listen to the show. Thank you to everyone who came through for the announcement of Fanbyte being, us joining Fanbyte. And again, all the love you all show on the internet every week, here and everything else that's on the podcast side of things, everything that's on the Twitter side of things. It's been really nice to see and hear all the kind of sentiments that I get thrown my way in a world that is very, very negative. I will happily say that I get a lot of positive sentiment thrown my way, and that has been fantastic. So things that I will hopefully want you to do is, again, subscribe to the show on the podcast platform of choice. Our YouTube is growing really, really well. We want to push more people to YouTube. Let me know things that you want to see on that end. If there's specific content you want to see coming from that side of the fence, if you want to see us do and try other new things, some of those things will have to wait until I get moved. But I think, we're trying to figure out ways that we and Fanbyte can do cool content together in a way that is different than what we usually do on Spawn and Me proper. So again, keep us in your thoughts, keep us posted on all that stuff, and make sure that you're giving us some ways to kind of think about all those things together so that we can make some really dope content for y'all. So until next week, massive amounts of love. Another programming note before we dip is this show will be up tomorrow as opposed to Tuesday. It is a thing that we're gonna try now that we're with Fanbyte. We have a couple more hands to help us with some stuff. Also, turnaround maybe a little bit faster. So this episode, for everyone who is listening to it tonight on Thursday on the live show, the recorded version and the podcast version should be up sometime tomorrow on Friday, and that may be our new launch day. Is going from Thursday to Fridays on the launches. So pay attention to that. Again, share it. Pass it around, give it to all your friends, give it to all your foes. And until then, we're going to get out of here for 355 of the Spawn Me podcast with Kahlief Adams. Massive amounts of love to you all at home. Wash your hands, wash your butt. Keep yourself in good spirits. Find good people around you to give you good energy. Everybody here in Twitch land, we see you next week. Everybody here in podcast land, we'll see you tomorrow when the show goes live. Much love to you all. Much love and peace.